All right, so I want to give you a brief overview of background of a project and media sponsorship opportunity that is designed to create mass market demand for sustainable housing. So the housing product we're talking about is a net zero energy home. So it's a very high performance building envelope matched with on-site renewable energy generation as well as energy storage. So this particular program was a program that was developed in collaboration with New South Wales Government, Federal Government, Green Building Council Australia, CSIRO, Australian Sustainable Built Environment Council, the Housing Industry Association, Master Builders Australia, and a whole heap of other industry participants. And the objective was to come up with a strategy to drive mass market demand for high performance homes and associated products and services. And the particular solution that was developed through this program was actually looking at using lifestyle TV as the vehicle for that. So I'll give you a little bit of background to the project and sort of show you the evidence base that feeds into this particular sponsorship opportunity. So if we look at sustainability in general, whether you're selling solar panels, whether you're selling batteries, insulation, energy efficiency products, what the traditional approach from industry has always been to simply educate consumers. So if we give them a fact sheet and we give them a website and we just tell them why they should adopt more energy efficient practices or why they should put solar on their home, of course they're going to make some sort of rational decision, right? So we've tried to educate consumers into making different consumption choices. So in a project that we were involved with the Cooperative Research Centre for Low Carbon Living, which involved the CSIRO, a number of universities, the New South Wales Government, we actually looked at this question around this top-down education approach and how do we actually shift consumers towards adopting products like net zero energy homes. And what the research found was that, in fact, this top-down educational approach has zero impact or negligible impact on consumer behaviour. In fact, there was virtually no evidence to support that education alone leads consumers to making more alternative consumption choices when they purchase various products and services for their homes. So then the natural question that arose out of that particular research program was then, well, if education doesn't work, what actually is driving consumer consumption choices and the sorts of things that they purchase? And so the researchers looked at this question specifically, and the evidence came back overwhelmingly that the primary driver, particularly for housing and all the various products and services that go into it, the primary driver for consumer consumption choices were shows like The Block and Grand Designs, and even shows like ABC's War and Waste. So what the research found was that these mainstream media channels were significantly influential and were probably one of the primary influences around consumers' consumption choices. And the reason for that is that TV shows based on storytelling, and they actually activate people's emotions, and human beings make decisions based on emotion. So if you go back thousands of years when human beings were hunter-gatherers out on the plains, and if you're a human being back then, if there was a physical threat to your personal being, you had to basically react immediately to a whole lot of chemicals being produced in your brain. So things like adrenaline, cortisol, oxytocin. And because if you didn't react to those chemicals and run away from the physical threat, you got eaten by something with very big teeth. Right? So all the human beings back then who immediately reacted to chemical production in their brains and ran away to survive went on to reproduce, and you repeat that cycle thousands of times, and you have us here today. And human beings today are still driven by emotional decision making, right? And then we use rational information to sort of post-rationalize the choices we make. And we see this thing through TV shows. If you look at things like Butler's Pantries, for example. So in mainstream volume builder housing products, project homes, you'll see lots and lots of builders offer a butler's pantry option on various floor plans. You can actually trace the origins of that design trend all the way back to a particular season on The Block when they introduced the idea of butler's pantries. So these particular TV shows are highly influential in driving consumers' consumption choices in the products and services that they ultimately purchase. And to give you an idea of how influential these particular media vehicles are, if we look at something like ABC's War and Waste, so in ABC's War and Waste, they had 3.3 million viewers, and of those 3.3 million viewers, in a follow-up piece of research that was done. What they found was 68% of people who watched that War on Waste Series 2 reported some change in their waste habit. So now, as a conversion rate alone, 68% is phenomenal. If your marketing teams were to run a marketing campaign with a 68% conversion rate, you would be very, very happy. These, and the reason that was really successful, which I'll touch on in a moment, is because of the communications framework that actually led consumers from watching the show through a series of engineered and pre-designed steps to get them to actually take a particular action. Right? And this is the same behavioural science and social science that underpins this particular opportunity, and I'll sort of touch on that shortly. We look at something like the block, for example. So the Housing Industry Association did some research on the block, looking at the economic impacts of the block. And what they found was that one show alone, so the block by itself, taking out all the various noise that occurred in the economy, the block by itself drives $250 million of additional expenditure that wouldn't otherwise exist in the renovation market for the 2 quarters following the screening of the show. So $500 million in total of additional renovation expenditure due to one TV show. But what the research also found was that it's not just the TV shows, and not all TV shows were made equal. So what they looked at were the shows that were extremely influential in shaping consumer trends or consumer choices. What they found was the shows that were really successful at actually taking consumers from a viewer through to actually making some sort of choice or becoming a customer had 3 core elements around them. So the first one was they had very engaging what we call flagship content. So the TV show was, people got emotionally invested in the characters, and it was good storytelling. But then the ones that were successful all had a very clear call to action. So after watching the show, they told you what the show wanted you to do. Visit our website, go here to get more information. All right, and so that's what we call our call to action content. And as part of that, they also incorporated what we call secondary content. So this is information that gets shared through a social ecosystem. And in doing so, what happens is that across things like social media, other consumers see lots of people talking about the show, talking about things that were happening, or bits of information, or trends, or things that people like. And it creates this herd effect. So what happens is across social media, everyone sees this stuff everywhere, and therefore, human beings, the other part of our evolution is that being in the tribe is safe, and the wisdom of the crowd. So when the tribe is doing something, then I should join in as well. So what the really successful TV shows did was they actually had this very active social ecosystem, and surrounding that is what we call the impact community. So these are people who are sharing this information online. These are like your rave fans. But in the case of the ABC's War on Waste, you can actually engineer this outcome. So they pre-recruited organisations to actually promote things across various social channels. And we're using this exact same strategy because there's a whole lot of behavioural science that underpins it for this particular opportunity. Which brings us to our project. So we were engaged by the New South Wales Government to come up with a strategy to drive mass market sustainable housing at scale. And based on a whole lot of evidence and research, we created a project which has 2 parts to it. So the first part is to drive that mass market consumer demand for sustainable housing and all the various products and services that go into that, from insulation to solar systems to battery systems. But the other piece is also to work with a range of industry partners to actually bring product to market at scale as well. One of the things we know from the building industry is that one of the primary drivers for most commercial organisations is sales, and so this whole program is designed around driving significant sales for our partners, and in doing so, showing the rest of the industry that there's strong demand for this market, and trying to activate a mimicking or copycat behaviour from competitors or other builders. So we want builders to bring housing to market at scale, but by working with our partners to help them sell lots and lots of product. A key aspect of our strategy is 2 TV shows that we're producing. So one's called Renovate Rebuild, which is the immediate opportunity, which I'll be talking about in this particular slide deck. And then we're currently just finishing off the editing of a pilot series for a show called Home Run, which is targeted very much at the new home market. So Renovate Rebuild is very much at existing homes, and Home Run is targeted at new home sales. So our communication strategy for both TV shows is based on this behavioural science, because of the leading edge behavioural science work that we've been doing with some universities and the CSIRO. And basically a 3-step process. So step one, in all of this is we actually need to activate people's emotions, and we're trying to create desire for different sustainable housing solutions. We then activate this social ecosystem. So what we do is we try to get people talking about this thing online, and we're actually engineering that outcome. And so the behavioural scientists would refer to that as social norming. So what they think is everyone's doing this, so therefore I should do it as well, whether it's putting in solar battery systems or putting in better insulation or upgrading the energy performance of their home. What we want is to make people think that that's just what everyone does. And then finally, we connect them to your products and services to help you sell product into the market to get these products to consumers. So the first part of this entire strategy is all around creating desire, and that's where the TV show comes in. So remember, human beings make decisions based on emotions, and so what we're trying to do with the TV show platform is actually to create desire for different products and services and features of homes. So making sure they've got good access to natural light, they've got good thermal performance, and they're energy efficient, and they produce their own power with things like solar battery systems. So let's play this. This is the trailer for Renovate Rebuild, which is the immediate sponsorship opportunity. So it's been commissioned by Channel 9 for broadcast in the first half of 2021, and we're aiming for a Easter broadcast slot, subject to getting underway with production just before Christmas and finalising all the project partners. So it'll go on their 9 Live channel, so a broadcast channel, and Channel 9 have guaranteed a minimum audience size for each episode of 350,000, which makes 2.8 million viewers across the entire season. So I'll just play this short trailer to sort of introduce you to Renovate Rebuild.
The house we're about to visit is ready for change. The family who live here have outgrown it, but love the area and want to stay. With the help of expert design teams, this home is going to get the treatment it deserves. But there's a very important decision to be made. On one hand, they could renovate. On the other, knock down and rebuild. It's a massive decision for the owners to make sure that they end up with a comfortable, healthy and efficient home that they've always dreamt of. And of course, budget is always an issue. One family, 2 teams, one question: renovate or rebuild?
Right, so that's Renovate Rebuild. So it's scheduled for broadcast in the first half of 2021. So Renovate Rebuild obviously is going after the existing home market, and the show format is designed around a family or a homeowner that they live in an area they love, they don't want to move, but the house is a bit tired, and they're trying to decide whether they knock down and rebuild or whether they actually do a major renovation to that property. We have 2 teams, so we have Team Renovate and Team Rebuild, both former fan favourites from the block, and those 2 teams basically are pitching a design solution to that family. And in going through the design process, we've deliberately designed the show format to integrate mission-aligned building products and brands, so things like insulation and solar, and high-performance windows and all those sorts of products and services that go into a high-performance sustainable home. And what we're trying to do is, in a lot of these decisions that consumers make, particularly in the existing home market, are made very early on in the customer journey, so right at that front end in design. So they're working out their budgets and they're trying to work out what they're going to do. And the TV show is designed to sort of integrate into the conversations that consumers are already having themselves at the moment. They're already every day through their homes, they're trying to make a decision. Do I go for a brand new kitchen benchtop, or do I improve the insulation of the home? Do I put in upmarket fittings in my bathroom, or do I put a solar system and a battery system on the property? The consumers are already having these conversations, and so what we do is we use a process called social modelling, where the characters in the show, so the former block contestants, so Michael and Carleen, who are Team Renovate, and Norm and Jess, who are Team Rebuild, And they effectively mimic those conversations, but what we're trying to do then is steer consumers towards, okay, instead of going for the high-end bench top, maybe we should go for better insulation. Instead of going for the high-end bathroom fittings, maybe I should put on a solar battery system onto the property. And the way we feature these various products and services within the show format is through these inspiration segments. So the two teams go off and visit properties to gain inspiration for their designs and talk about your products and services, so it becomes a natural part of the storyline. One of the really good things about this approach is also collecting, we use secondary content throughout the social media, which I'll touch on in a moment, and one of the great things about that is we actually get to collect some great consumer data, which helps your marketing teams to actually better target your products and services. So I'm just going to play this. This is an example of an inspiration segment. So this is for a insulation, like a insulated wall panel product. So we don't actually mention the brand name in this case because we just shot this as an example. But in the show, we would mention the particular brand name in there. So there's some brand association from the consumer. So let me play this, and then we'll talk about some of the secondary content.
Have a go at this, son.
Oh, it's such a good vibe. I want to live here.
This is awesome.
That Palm Springs design at the moment is stunning.
Isn't it?
It's so pretty. And then the optical illusion, because it is such a small space, that they've used simultaneous colour all the way through in the pergola and the tiles, makes it look bigger than what it is.
Well, having that going out, it is actually a big space now.
You wouldn't need it any bigger than this.
No, that's great.
Beautiful.
Tell you what I like.
Yeah.
This panel.
That is nice. It is really coastal. And this is what?
This would be Steve. This is what Steve and Ellie would be wanting, I reckon. It's got that beachy feel, got the groove in it. And you know what? That's a finished panel already insulated.
What do you mean? You put it up straight away?
Have a look at that.
Oh, no way. Is it new?
It's composite, so it's got foam and concrete in it with fibro sheet on both sides. You put it up,
Stunned.
screw it on, gap the join, paint it, done. So what it is, it's timber frame with insulation in the timber frame, wallpaper.
Wallpaper?
Oh, not the wallpaper, builder's paper.
Yeah.
And then a batten on the wall, and then that's screwed to it.
Done.
So what it does is it creates two cavities. That panel is insulated, plus the insulation in the wall.
Does it speed up your building time?
Oh, definitely speed up your building time. But the energy savings because of all this is unbelievable.
It's really, we should look at that.
Yeah, I like this.
family.
This is a great panel.
Yeah. And it just feels like you could live here
Yeah,
forever.
I know.
All right, so that's an example of an inspiration piece and how we would integrate various products and services into the show narrative and storytelling in a very natural way. So once we've actually got people once we've positioned products in the show to make them desirable, remember that's all about activating emotions, the next step of the process is to activate this social ecosystem, right? And what the purpose of this step is to reinforce that desirability through what we call social norming, right? So what we're trying to do is get consumers to talk about these features and see lots of people talking about it, so it becomes like the new normal. And what we're doing is effectively helping them move down like a sales funnel or continue the journey towards actually making the sort of purchase decision that we want. So activating this social ecosystem has a couple of elements to it. So the first part is using what we call a impact community. So the impact community is a whole group of businesses that we've recruited that are sort of mission aligned. So they see they're either industry groups like the Green Building Council of Australia that have a mission-driven purpose around driving the uptake of more sustainable homes, through to businesses that stand to benefit from the increase in demand for net zero energy housing. So whether you sell insulation or solar products, or whether you're a designer or an energy auditor, we have a very large cohort of organisations, which include the New South Wales Government, the federal government, CSIRO, the Australian Building Council the Australian Sustainable Built Environment Council, Green Building Council of Australia, organisations like Renew down in Victoria, plus a heap of businesses. So in the pilot episode of Renovate or Rebuild, which you can actually find if you search on YouTube, we had nearly 100 organisations supporting the project. And what the purpose of the impact community is they actually promote the show out through all their various social channels. So not only by getting involved in this particular opportunity, you're tapping into the social network from the show itself and the fans of the show, but actually get this massive reach through all these various organisations who actually share information out through their social channels to promote the show, and that sort of comes as part of the sponsorship packages. And so those impact communities sort of drives this engagement through social media, but also then helps provide resources and gets consumers talking about features and provides them with fact sheets and information to help them understand their choices around the performance of the products and services they're looking at consuming. The other aspect of this social ecosystem is getting social diffusion of key pieces of information about sustainable housing. All right, and so we refer to this as secondary content. Now, one of the challenges of things like insulation, some of the features of sustainable housing aren't necessarily things that people talk about. There is no one out there talking about insulation necessarily every day, and about how great it is and what R value they have in their home. But what we're trying to do with this secondary content is actually to make things like insulation and solar and batteries and those sorts of things talking points by average consumers. And the way we do that is, instead of taking the traditional educational talking head type approach, we produce what we call edutainment material. So we provide sneak peeks, behind the scenes footage. There's a whole lot of stuff that we do behind social. But we've also been producing a series of edutainment. So as the name suggests, it's educational and entertaining. And what you want to do is produce content that people want to share. And we know from the social science and the behavioural science that actually people's knowledge retention using these types of edutainment narratives are much, much stronger. So people remember what they see in these things. So I'll show you a couple of examples. So let's look at solar batteries as an example. So I'll just play this little example. And this is traditionally how we've tried to communicate to consumers about solar and battery systems.
Solar battery storage changes how you use your solar power. With solar battery storage, your solar panels will still directly power your appliances while the sun is out. However, the extra power you're generating does not go into the grid. It gets stored in your battery. The unused power you've stored in...
Alright, so I'm a solar battery nut and love this stuff, but already on board with that type of video, right? And there is no consumer who's going to be sharing something like that. So I'm just going to play this video now. So this is the edutainment approach to give exactly the same information in a way that people can remember and actually understand the concept of the benefits of a solar battery system, but in a way that actually people want to share it. So let's have a look at the edutainment approach.
When we were renovating our home, we were really conscious of our energy costs. We didn't want to be constantly putting our hands in our pockets to pay a big energy bill.
So putting rooftop solar on our house was a no-brainer. Some might say it's like having money fall from the sky.
But because we weren't at home all the time during the day when the energy was being produced, we found we probably weren't collecting all the value from our system.
Our solar panels coupled with the battery system allows us to collect and store the energy we don't use during the day.
Which means we can use that energy later on in the day when we need it most.
It also helps us do our bit for the environment and our kids' future.
So that's an edutainment approach to something like solar. Jake, go around the back, please. No, round the other side, not near this window. I can hear everything. So that's an edutainment approach to looking at solar. So let's look at something like insulation, which is probably even harder to sell. So this is the traditional approach we've taken around educating consumers about insulation.
To reduce the heat transfer, it's crucial to have insulation in the roof and walls, and also beneficial to insulate timber floors. Insulation keeps heat inside in winter and stops heat getting inside in summer. The R value is a measure of how well the insulation will reduce heat flow. The higher the R value, the better the performance.
All right, so that's a traditional way of talking about insulation, and we know insulation, for example, is one of the cheapest and easiest and most cost-effective ways to improve the energy performance of a home, but nobody is talking about that particular video, right? And so the idea is, how do you actually make things like insulation something that people want to share? So this is our approach, and a video we put together recently around insulation using an edutainment approach.
We've been renovating this place for about 10 years now, so I'm getting pretty familiar with Michael's renovation language, the good, the bad and the crazy.
Bugger! You've got to be.
But he actually really only goes crazy for insulation.
What sort of insulation you got in your place, Lindsay? In summer, so cool. Don't even have to put the aircon on. So when it comes to insulation in your house, there's sort of two factors that, determine how good it is. So it's how thick it is, and the other is the thermal efficiency of the actual product. So, if you've got those two, you get a higher R value. It's pretty good, hey? So, if you've got a higher R value in your house, mate, you won't even feel winters in this place, eh? It'll be so cool. But in summer, it keeps out, all the heat as well. So, that's what I've got at my place. I've got, R3.5 up here in the roof.
Sometimes I think Michael's insulation obsession may even border on unhealthy.
Yeah, so anyway, I said you can keep the donkey. Classic. Whee! Oh my God. Oh, yeah, tell you what. Oh no! Oh my God! Oh my God!
But secretly, I like insulation too, because it makes me comfortable. It keeps me cool in summer and warm in winter. And it's not actually as complicated as Michael makes out. The higher the R value, the better the thermal performance. So, bigger actually is better.
All right, so that video had exactly the same content as the previous educational one. But it's been done in such a way that actually people want to share that and provide some sort of social currency to share to their friends and through social media. So it sort of creates that social diffusion effect that we're looking for. The other great thing about this secondary content is that you get really good consumer data. So obviously we're posting these sorts of videos and behind the scenes footage. And in the case of the full TV series, we would do interviews with your staff and your various products and services. We provide, more fact sheets. Or behind the scenes footage of us visiting the properties that feature your products, and we're pumping that out across social, so things like YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, and on all of these platforms allows us to actually get really good analytics on the consumers that are actually watching and sharing and using that information, which then provides really good data to your marketing teams to work out how to better position your products and services to ultimately sell more products and services. And finally, the last step is, once we've got people emotionally invested in an idea through the TV show, we've created a sense of reinforce that desirability through social norming and the creating that social ecosystem. Now they're ready to actually make a purchase decision, and that's where we send them to your various landing pages or websites or wherever it is that or display homes, wherever it is our partners want to send those consumers in order to make a purchase decision associated with their products and services. I also wanted to give you sort of the bigger picture. So we've been talking about at the moment just the TV show and the elements that go into that. And as you can see, it uses quite a sophisticated behavioural science. It's very evidence-based, as well as a very entertaining show format. But the TV show is actually part of a much bigger strategy that involves, those partners I mentioned before, the CSIRO, Housing Industry Association, Master Builders Australia, New South Wales Government, federal government. And it's made up of a housing roadmap. And so these are the key elements of the roadmap. So at the top there, you can see a lot of work that's being done at the government level, which is, the new National Construction Code, which comes out in 2022, which is at this stage aimed around net zero energy ready homes. In the blue layer, the next layer down there's a whole lot of work around making sure we train the industry to be able to deliver these homes, and there's a lot of work around sustainable finance products, sales training for our partners to actually convert these consumers into actual customers. And then we have the orange layer there, which is our TV show and communication strategy. And then down the bottom, we have a whole lot of economic modelling, which has been done by CSIRO and the Housing Industry Association around creating a economic indice to measure the uptake of these net zero energy ready homes. But the real driver for this project is this number. So the CSIRO looked at this strategy that we've done and did some economic modelling with the University of Melbourne to look at what might be the impact of using this mass media TV show to drive the uptake of sustainable housing and products. And they've estimated by 2030 that up to 50% of all new home sales in Australia could be to a net zero energy standard, taking this approach, which is a $22 billion industry that doesn't exist today. If we take the same sort of figures on the home renovation market, we're talking an additional, $18 odd billion, so a $40 billion new marketplace that doesn't exist today. And so this is the report. If you're interested in looking at that economic modelling, this is the report that CSIRO published. It's publicly available, and what they found was that using this voluntary approach, where we're using consumer media to drive demand, that we could generate 7,000 new jobs, $500 million of extra investment, and what they found was it's substantially cheaper to do this than any sort of incentive-based program to get consumers to adopt this sort of approach. And then finally, I guess one of the things is we're in this interesting world at the moment with COVID-19, and we know that many brands are in this dilemma about what they should do with their marketing spend. But if we actually look at history and go back to the 2008 GFC, what the evidence shows is that actually if we want to capture substantial market share and think of sustainable housing as a brand or a product, what the evidence shows is that if we go back to 2008 GFC, is that those brands that continue to get out in front of consumers during the economic downturn actually captured substantial market share on the recovery. And the reason for that is there's this relationship between what's called share of voice and share of market. So share of voice is how often consumer hears about your brand or your product relative to your competitors. And that share of voice percentage has a direct translation into your market share. So what happens during an economic downturn is your competitors will actually start to wind back on their marketing budget. And if you maintain that, or if you don't wind back as far, what happens is you end up getting your share of voice increases because consumers hear about your product and service more frequently than your competitors. And then when the recovery occurs, there's a direct translation into market share. So actually now is the time to get out in front of consumers to actually capture that market share around this sustainable housing, because consumers are looking for that. And so we actually think now is exactly the right time to be getting out in front of consumers with this type of product, and it creates a unique opportunity for brands, particularly in the sustainability space. So just briefly also, I mentioned we have a second TV show in the works, so we're actually just finishing off the production of the pilot for this at the moment. The show is called Home Run, very much targeted at the new build market, but there'll be opportunities coming for that particular program shortly, probably later in 2020, early 2021. We'll start to approach the market around that show as well. So as you can see, this strategy is much bigger opportunity than just a media buy on a TV show. We're taking a very system level evidence-based approach to driving this mass uptake of sustainable housing. The opportunities there to reach a substantial audience. So for Renovate Rebuild, Channel 9 have committed to a minimum audience size of 2.8 million. And with Home Run in the mix, we anticipate getting to an audience size in excess of 6 million viewers. The economic modelling by CSIRO suggests that this approach is the most effective and powerful way to engage with consumers, and they looked at different approaches around using incentivizing consumers, and found it was 25 times more effective than incentivized transitions. And it's a really unique opportunity for purpose-driven driven brands to get involved as sponsors on Renovate or Rebuild, because you'll access that substantial reach that comes through our impact community, and that the ecosystem construction that we're doing, or was the establishment of this social ecosystem around the TV show. So if you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to me. Alternatively, if you're interested to hear the role of New South Wales Government in this particular program, feel free to reach out to Rachel Haley. But thanks for listening.